Last month, my husband and I moved countries and had to pack our belongings into 3 big suitcases. I thought I would have to take a lot of heavy decisions, have regrets, that my heart would ache to part with the things that gave me the feeling of home, comfort, and abundance. But what I felt in the end was different. In this video, I'll share with you what exactly I decluttered and why, and what I've learned. We'll go practical, psychological, and a little bit philosophical. And in the end of the video, I'll share 2 extra insights that are very thought-provoking. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Anna, and this channel is about the gentle philosophy of finding and nourishing your true self through meaningful ideas, relationships, and things. And please remember that here I voice only my personal, very subjective opinion and experience that don't have to be the same as yours, and it's absolutely fine to be different. It is not the first time when I move countries, not even the second, and my circumstances allow me to be more minimalist than, for example, someone who has young children or animal companions. I cannot say that I have a shopping addiction or hoarding tendencies. Frugality is something deeply ingrained into my mindset because of my poverty background, and I always like to think of myself as an advanced intentional consumer, but things that I had to declutter this time told me some alternative stories that I didn't necessarily want to hear. So we'll begin with this quite embarrassing category, but I will be utterly honest with you and with myself too. Scarcity mindset is something that I've been dealing with for the most part of my adult life. On this channel, there's even a dedicated video that I filmed about 2 or 3 years ago, and since then the situation has improved a lot, but still, as it turned out, I have accumulated once again some stuff that I've bought out of fear that I wouldn't have access to them later. Such as some art and craft materials. I was sure that I would use them, of course, but I hadn't, and in the end I either sold or donated them. Collecting stashes of supplies out of scarcity mindset is very common in the crafting and art community. I've heard a lot of knitters call their yarn stashes an investment. And while on the one hand it is quite understandable because prices keep surging, new tariffs emerge, countries and markets get isolated, so having a good collection of yarn that you might use in the future seems quite a reasonable decision, but there's always a but. And I know this from my own experience. Once you begin to find an excuse for collecting things that you don't use out of scarcity mindset, it becomes harder and harder to stop and to set some reasonable limits. Again, I thought that I've said farewell to the fantasy me quite a while ago, but another aspect of that self has emerged, who is not quite a fantasy, but a me who has more energy and more free time than real me. That fantasy me can read all the books that she has put on her reading list, or at least all the books that she has started reading, who can watch all the videos from her YouTube subscriptions, who can do all the fun and entertaining things that she has planned. I had to clear the space that fantasy me has occupied with a new board game, for example. That board game was bought because Brian, my husband, and I thought that we would have a blast playing it, spending time offline and, I don't know, having some fun time together. But we looked into it only once and we immediately felt mentally and emotionally exhausted, because at this point of our life, real us don't have the energy to deal with very intricate board game that involves quite a learning curve. Maybe it's embarrassing to admit it, but I don't have problems with it. So unfortunately, I had to declutter that game and to resell it. The good thing is that I bought it already secondhand, so there was not that much of a guilt involved, but there was still some. And I will expand more on the feeling of guilt later in the video. Have you ever gone to someone's place to hang out, like to your friend or family member or good acquaintance, and then at some point been asked if you would like to take some of their things along with you? Stuff that they don't use, or stuff that they don't like anymore, or clothes which had a wrong sizing but might look great on you, or just some random things. And have you ever felt too polite to say no and then end up trying to bury all those things deep in your closet because you have no idea what to do with them, because you don't like them, you don't need them? That's what happened to me again, although I promised to myself not to do that. But I'm a human, and I find saying no to certain people or certain things quite challenging. And not that I say yes all the time, but quite often. I guess it's all about personal boundaries and balancing those with love and respect and care you feel for other people, like when you don't want to hurt their feelings. It's very tricky to maintain this balance, and in this category go all the gifts that have missed the target. So yeah, I don't have a solution to offer in this category. I think it's a dead end for me. And by the way, if you would like to see more personal and vloggy videos from me and thus support my work, consider joining my Patreon community, where I post new videos every week, sharing life updates, different experiences, and chats that are much safer to share in a smaller circle of friends. You can join and leave whenever you want. The link will be down below. This collection of things that I had to declutter because they were not me or no longer me consists mostly of clothes. Those were the ones that I still loved, but wanted them to go because they felt like aliens on me. I have grown out of them. At first, I thought it would be hard because I form special emotional connections with my clothes. Many of them I make myself or alter them in any way, so they bear my mark, so to speak. But in the end, it wasn't that hard to part because I realized that I don't want to turn my wardrobe into a museum of not me. It was so easy to give away one of my ever-favorite dresses, but in reality, I felt more pain by keeping it. And unfortunately, I don't have enough words to explain why, as if I treated that dress as a portal to the life and the old me that no longer exists. If you know yourself well enough, you can always tell when a certain garment begins to feel odd on you. It's like you're in a movie and the costume designer is not doing their job well. Of course, life is not a movie, but it is not eternal to continue wearing things that you don't want to wear. This category also contained some personal care products that didn't work for me, but I still for some reason hesitated to declutter them for months, hoping that some miracle will happen and that I will use them. But of course, it didn't happen. My hair and my skin didn't change. It remained the same, and it was impossible for me to use those products. In one of the first videos on this channel that was filmed back in 2021, I shared tips on how to live if you have a very small salary. And there, one of the best tips was about not experimenting. So the tip was do not experiment, especially when it comes to personal care products. And I still find this tip very useful, especially for people with problematic hair and skin and also certain health issues. We, such people, have to be very conservative, very skeptical, of course with certain exceptions, but it's a whole different topic to discuss. As we were limited to just 3 suitcases, all our heavy and bulky belongings haven't made it to Serbia. Namely, a small suitcase because we had to get 2 new big ones to fit all that we wanted to carry with us. Sport equipment such as thick yoga mat, kettlebell and MFR roll, yet I do regret not taking the roll with me. Kitchenware and appliances, a big blender and a printer. The latter is something I will miss too. It opened up new facets of art practice for me, but maybe I'll get one here eventually. Rugs, throw, bed linen, blankets, etc. Those were impossible to take anyway, but still I managed to pack one small throw. That is kind of a comfort thing for me. I've shared some insights along the way, but there are 2 extra ones that I find very important to process. The first one is the following. Decluttering is full of guilt, but it is very essential not to let that guilt grow. This guilt doesn't always come from within, from ourselves, but from the outside, from a sort of a societal judgment that we might feel. Clutter that we end up having can be often perceived as a personal failure, and besides, we are sort of pressured to be very ambitious with our decluttering. We are pressured to donate, to sell, to recycle, not to just throw away. And when this throwing away happens, it's very hard to accept. I did my best to do the right thing when decluttering, but at some point I got so overwhelmed and I got so upset with myself. I was feeling like, crap, I'm a 42-year-old woman. Why am I doing this to myself? Why am I so mindless? Why I'm so irresponsible? And all this guilt that accumulated in me, and it felt quite destructive, was coming from the outside. On the day of our departure, it turned out that the suitcases were just a little bit too heavy, and I just had to throw away certain things because I simply didn't have time, didn't have anything to do the right thing and to find a new owner for those things. And this is what happens. There are nuances of decluttering that should be taken into account and that should evoke self-compassion and kindness to yourself, because the stress of getting rid of things is real. And this stress doesn't have to be increased for whatever reason. I asked myself, why did this still happen to me? Why I've considered myself kind of a minimalist and I thought I was an intentional, almost perfect consumer, but I still ended up with having things that I had to throw away. I had to declutter in this or that manner, but anyway. And what I've realized that I'm just a human. I'm not living in a vacuum. I'm living in this world with its rules, whether I want it or not. And I have certain programs inbuilt in my mind from my background, from places where I lived, people who I interacted with. And these programs oftentimes make me do things mindlessly. We all have these programs, so they can be similar or different slightly or drastically, but this is a whole different topic to discuss, I guess. Guilt is not necessarily a wrong or bad feeling. There are situations when guilt can lead to some very important personal realizations, or it can become a catalyst of some good actions, of some changes, but it is important not to let it grow and become destructive. We should nourish self-kindness and self-acceptance and compassion and also honesty with ourselves, because without that, I don't know, everything becomes an illusion. The second insight is that decluttering is utterly therapeutic. It creates empty spaces that are very promising and that are filled with opportunities or surprise, hopefully. When I declutter, I feel like I'm gaining control over my life back. I feel like I'm proving to myself that I can part with things if needed without feeling too attached to them. But of course, the situation can be tricky here as well, because this feeling can lead to compulsive decluttering when you get addicted to the whole process and then to the process of clearing spaces, and then you clutter them in order to have something to declutter further. There is always a fine line between a remedy and the poison. My yet another massive decluttering experience has taught me a few lessons about myself and showed me where I was not completely honest in my decisions and where I was influenced by some stupid, outdated programs. But all these didn't make me feel like a failure. Not at all. Rather, I felt like I'm a human. I'm a living mind who has different periods of life, who has different seasons, so to speak, seasons of decisions, seasons of events, and of certain mindsets as well. I hope this video was inspiring, supportive, or maybe just curious for you. And please feel free to share in the comments what are your relationships with decluttering, what it makes you learn about yourself, what decisions you have to make, what insights you get. Maybe you can give me some advice about dealing with things that I agree to accept from other people, although I don't want to accept them. So let's connect and discuss everything. Thank you so much for being here, for your time, attention, and support of my work, dear friends. And as always, for now, be safe and keep your heart open. And I will see you soon. Пока-пока.